Welcome to Sliver and Bite TV. Did you know we also have a podcast? Head to any of the major platforms and listen now. But today we're making bruschetta. Depending on who you speak to in what area of the world, everyone seems to have a different pronunciation. Here in Australia, you would call it bruschetta. But doing a little research, it's bruschetta. And to pluralize it, it is bruschette. Okay, enough of the language lesson. So you can see that I've started dicing my red onion. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll see that I'm taking a much more cautious approach to dicing the onion. And you'll see that I also am quite cautious cutting the tomato. This is in large part to the fact that you don't want to overwhelm or underwhelm each bite by having too much or too little of both of those main ingredients. And as for the ratio, that's really up to personal taste. You can follow my guide in the recipe, but if you are a lover of onion and love garlic, you can amp it up or bring it down to as much or as little as you like. Just finishing up the dicing of the red onion. As you can see, it's quite small, so it's probably best to go for a millimeter squared. At this stage, you could put it straight into the large bowl that you're going to be putting the rest of the ingredients in. However, for filming purposes, I've put it in some ramekins. Now it's time to mince our garlic. First off, you've seen me cut them down the center so that they are easier to cut, so that they can actually grip onto the board instead of slipping out underneath you. If your garlic is too coarse, you might end up being a little too overwhelmed, because remember, all of the ingredients are raw. You'll also see that I have left one clove of garlic off to the side, and that is to rub down the toasted bread when we go to serve. It's now time to get started on our tomatoes. I've gone for a vine-ripened tomato here, but Roma will do just fine. But also you could go for the smaller, sweeter grape tomato. We're going to start by cutting them in half. And for half of the tomatoes, we're going to scoop out the insides. We do this for two reasons. We, one, don't want the mix to be too wet, and also the seeds can be a little bitter. And don't forget to cut out the stalk. And we'll be dicing these a similar size, maybe just a touch larger than the onion, because obviously there is less taste to the tomato flesh. I've sped it up because you don't need to see me chopping up several tomatoes. And it's certainly up to you as to whether or not you wanted to cut out the pith. and I couldn't resist doing a little editing magic. If only it was that easy. Okay, now that the tomatoes are done, I've just cleaned down my workstation, and it's time to finely chop our basil. Now you'll want to do this quite finely because you'll want it to spread evenly throughout your bruschetta mix. However, it's again personal preference. So we're going to start assembling our bruschetta mix. You can add the basil straight into the bowl along with the tomatoes. Shortly followed by the garlic and red onion. And we're going to give that a good mix. You want to make sure that any of the onion that is in the onion rings, make sure that they split apart from each other. Otherwise you'll get a nasty surprise with a whole mouthful of onion. And we're adding a bit of salt and also some pepper. And this is just to taste, because you can always garnish it with salt and pepper once it's been prepared. We're giving that another mix. Make sure that that salt and pepper is mixed all the way through thoroughly. And now for some olive oil. You want a good quality olive oil for this. Don't put too much in. I think that a lot of people go, let's just, make this so that it sticks together. It's going to stick together anyway, so just enough to coat, a light coating of the mix. Now it's time to toast our bread. You can do this under the grill. I've got it going into a fry pan, but I won't put the oil into the fry pan. I will brush it onto the bread because you've got a little more control over it and you don't want to oversaturate your sourdough. The thinner the better when it comes to these slices, because it'll be quite crispy once you've toasted it off, and you don't want to shred the inside of your mouth. And I've got my induction heat on at 100 degrees. You don't want to go in too hot. You want to make sure that you warm the bread all the way through. And also, you can adjust the temperature up and down to make sure that you're not burning the edges, because you want to make sure you're golden brown throughout the whole slice of the bread. So a nice even coating of olive oil, and we're flipping it over to do the other side. It's nice to have a few different sizes of the bread as well, because some people may only want just a couple of bites instead of half a meal. And then that's right into the fry pan. And depending on how you cut your bread, you may need to have a spatula just to push down on the inside of the bread, just to make sure it's making contact with the fry pan. Otherwise you're going to get a burnt edge around the crust line. It's now time to assemble. So we're just going to grab a piece of sourdough. You're going to grab the piece of garlic and we're going to rub that over and transfer some of the garlic juice over. It's amazing how much transfers, so just be careful you don't overpower the sourdough. And now we're going to spoon on some of that glorious mix. You could actually pick up the piece of sourdough and suspend it over the bowl, just so that you don't need to be so neat. And for a little added indulgence, some balsamic glaze. Such a simple recipe, and you'll have your guests and your family wanting you to cook it again. Thanks for joining me. See you soon.